Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV. Still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but it can only be either of those if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. You call us, we'll call you back, establish a clear line, and remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be down at 0, or I'll have to move swiftly on. The telephone number to call is 44208-601-4555. You can SMS the show also, and the best of those will come up here on the comment wall. 447800008066. Or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. That too, the best of them, will come up on the comment wall. And this being the 21st century, you can even tweet me at comment_presstv. The al-Aqsa Mosque in Holy Jerusalem is tonight under siege. In fact, until about 20 minutes ago, it was closed for the first time since Israel got its bloody hands on the mosque with its illegal invasion and occupation of Jerusalem in 1967. Nothing could be quite as explosive an Israeli action as that. For those who don't know, al-Aqsa is the third holiest place in Islam. It is the place that Muslims believe the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself ascended from the roof of the al-Aqsa to the heavens to receive the revelation, or at least a part of it. This is very, very serious stuff. For the Israeli occupation force, which has long harassed, killed, and temporarily blocked to all kinds of Muslims access to the mosque, to actually close it, because the mosque will not allow Jewish worshippers to worship Judaism at the mosque, could not be more inflammatory, could not be more incendiary, and it has, as could have been predicted, anticipated, created a shockwave around the entire world. Muslims believe that Israel is intent on destroying the al-Aqsa Mosque. For years, excavation, tunneling, supposedly for archaeological purposes, has been going on underneath the mosque. And Muslims believe that the day is coming, and probably they believe the day today had come, when Israel and the Zionist state would make its final assault on al-Aqsa. There are 2 billion Muslims in the world. For every one of those, al-Aqsa could scarcely be more sacred, more holy. And yet, the Zionist gangs, which regularly invade the Haram al-Sharif, the mount on which the al-Aqsa and Dome on the Rock are situated, actually closed it. They have, they said, in the last 15 minutes, reopened it. But that's a lie. They have reopened it only for those over 50. And they have restricted access, even by people over 50, to many parts of the compound, many parts of the al-Aqsa Mosque. No Muslim will accept this. The leader of the Palestinian resistance organization Hamas has called for all Palestinians who can possibly do so to head towards al-Aqsa to defend it. He went further. He said that anyone with a weapon in the region who could reach al-Aqsa should be prepared to lay down their lives in order to defend it. And he said that this would be a real jihad. My interpretation of that is that the leader of Hamas is saying what Muslims all over the world are saying, which is this: why are Muslims massacring each other around the Muslim world when al-Aqsa itself is in the hands of foreigners, in the hands of those who care nothing for it at best and who want to seize it and destroy it at worst? I think that's a very good question. But another question is, why has Israel done this? Why has Israel closed the al-Aqsa Mosque? Do they have a death wish? Do they want a new intifada in Palestine around the most holy banner it would be possible to hold forth? Are they smarting at the extraordinary language of the United States government about Netanyahu and the Zionist gang, released in media across the world in just the last few days? I won't repeat the word that the US administration officially used about Netanyahu, but you can be sure it was deeply insulting and thoroughly deserved. Is it because they are smarting at the wave of recognition that a Palestinian state is now attracting? Is it a message to the United Nations in advance of the normal November declarations about Palestinian statehood? Is it because Netanyahu is afraid of political opinion leaking to his right, and he wants to prove that he's definitely not chicken? Are they trying to bring Armageddon still closer? You tell me. And the second subject tonight is the one that we've been dealing with for the last few weeks, which is the situation in Syria, where people who could be defending al-Aqsa are instead murdering other Muslims, Christians, Kurdish people, Yazidis, Druze, Shiites, Sunnis who don't agree with them. The fanatics in Syria have just executed, unbelievably, 40 tribal leaders, Sunni tribal leaders, and released the photographs to the world of the men all lined up in a row, lying on the road with large bullet holes in the back of their heads. Not even Israel does that. But these so-called champions of Islamic purity are doing that to other Muslims, other Sunni Muslims. Imagine what they do to the others. Now, there are many forces at play. Now we have the USA, France, Britain, what they call Saudi Arabia, what they call the United Arab Emirates, and many others, joining the swirl of forces active on the ground. Turkey, the Kurdish people, ISIL itself, the so-called Free Syrian Army, which is neither free nor Syrian nor much of an army. Jabhat al-Nusra, the official al-Qaeda affiliate, all of them piling in, destroying, killing, murdering, maiming uncountable numbers of people. But I want to concentrate on just 4 of these forces tonight: the Kurds, ISIL, the FSA, and Turkey. What does each of those want from this fight? That's my second question. Arshad in India is my first caller. Arshad, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Good evening, George.
Good evening to you.
Sir, I don't want to, say about the ISIS, that how the emergence of the ISIS in Syria has left the country in destructive condition, and undoubtedly it is being created by America and Saudi Arab monarchs and, of course, its allies. It's America who is supporting ISIS by providing them billions of dollars, and Mr. Obama is passing, bills in the White House and providing them weaponry, logistics, and other economical support. America nourishes this group to the extreme extent that they become monsters, and they cut down everything which comes in front of them. They had innocent civilians, rape women, and even take people as slaves, and even capture children and sell them in the market. It's this extreme of I don't have words to condemn it. And ISIS has not only playing a role to destroy Iraq and Syria, but also brought bad name to Islam as well. Whatever they do, that's all un-Islamic, but they claim that that's Islamic. It's so strange. The main objective of America, I feel that, but I can say that America is having a very great hand to create ISIS, and the main objective of America is to topple Assad's regime and place a puppet government at his place who will bow before America.
Okay, Arshad, thanks for that call. It's going to be busy tonight, so we can't keep people on the line for too long. I don't believe that the United States created ISIL. They created the conditions for ISIL, but the germ of what ISIL is present in the Muslim Ummah. And every one of us knows this. We saw it, perhaps, in modern times, emerge for the first time in Afghanistan in the 1980s. We see it in Pakistan, in the murderous attacks on Shiites and other minorities inside Pakistan. We've seen it in different Arab countries. It exists. The United States doesn't need to create it. But they created the conditions for it to flourish. They didn't give ISIL directly money and weapons, but they gave money and weapons to others from whom ISIL took the money and weapons. American and British invasion of Iraq and occupation and deliberate sectarianization of Iraqi politics over a decade created the conditions for ISIL to flourish. So it's not a straight, formulaic American creation gets out of control, but it's definitely out of control. Mo is in the UK. Let's hear what he thinks. Mo, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hi, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
George, these IS guys are cowards. They do not go to Palestine to free the Palestinians because they're terrified of confronting IDF. But they find it easier, like you say, to kill fellow Muslims. But the other frightening aspect is the Peshmerga forces coming from Iraq have among them Mossad agents. In addition to that, they also have people who claim to have converted to Islam from Judaism. And this is a very, very frightening prospect because they are being led by Mossad people, and that's why they wear masks so they cannot be identified. But I'm also puzzled. Why would you say the Americans did not arm these guys? The Americans did arm these guys in Turkey and Jordan. And I'm afraid your information is outdated on this.
No, they didn't arm ISIL in either Turkey or Jordan, but they poured weapons into Turkey and Jordan, and they didn't give a damn who ended up with it. It didn't stop them that the so-called FSA had almost every single weapon taken off them by Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda affiliate. Almost every gun, almost every bullet that the United States delivered to the FSA was taken from a giant warehouse by al-Qaeda's affiliate in the region, Jabhat al-Nusra, which is, of course, a rival of ISIL. They didn't give them directly weapons and money, but that's a distinction without a difference, because the reality is they created the conditions, they poured in the weapons and the money through their satrapies in the Persian Gulf, And the end result is ISIL, which is on the rampage. And ISIL are not just not prepared to fight Israel, they are collaborating with Israel. Their wounded are being treated in Israeli hospitals, and we've seen pictures published of that. ISIL has nothing to do, you called them IS, I refuse this term. They are neither Islamic nor are they a state. Their behavior brings shame on any real Muslim. It's not just on the political level, as our last caller made clear. They are raping women on an industrial scale. They are stealing women and children and selling them in markets. I read an account just the other day of a woman who was forced to witness the murder of her husband and was taken as a forced spoil of war by the people who killed her husband, and had to become the wife of one of them until she escaped. This bestiality, cutting off heads, eating hearts, cutting off heads even of women in Kobani, has nothing whatsoever to do with Islam. And we have to be unequivocal about that. Let's go to the next caller, Shokra in the United Kingdom. Go ahead, Shokra.
Good evening, Mr. George.
Good evening.
Yeah, I was trying to add on the, as you said, I totally agree with what you said. ISIS is not just used by Americans. ISIS created the lawlessness. There is no jobs, lots of dictators, and then we destroyed their law. What do you expect? What do you expect? There's lots of people, angry people. Saudi supports them with their money and a gun. Qatari facilitates Israelis and look after them. American plan them. So that is, I think, is that so many actors involved in that neighborhood. When you see Kurdish people is dying in front of our eyes, what happened in Turkey chatting with the soldier chatting with the ISIS? And Turkey has got, I think Turkey is dreaming of the empire. They're dreaming how they're going to capture all the lost lands. Like these days, there's a day in the TV, they show Sultan Suleiman. They have to wake up to see the hand is full-blooded of the Palestinian, the Syrians.
Shukra, I'm losing you. I'm losing you. Forgive me. I'm losing you. The line is bad. Aidan is in London. Always worth hearing from, too. Go ahead, Aidan.
Thanks for having me. God bless you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
George, yeah, I want to talk about Turkey. How can Turkey allow the PKK to take arms against ISIL? Would the UK arm the IRA to fight alleged terrorists in the cities of England? Would Spain arm ETA to fight al-Qaeda in Morocco? Turkey declaring war on ISIL will expand the PKK into northern Syria.
Aidan, can I just correct you? They refuse to allow the PKK into Syria. They have instead allowed armed forces, only 150 of them, from Iraqi Kurdistan, who are very reliable, these forces, very reliable servants of the United States, and as was made clear earlier, even Israel. So they haven't allowed the PKK into Syria. The PKK affiliate YPG, the youth section, has been doing the fighting in Kobani all of this time. But Turkey has not allowed a single bullet to reinforce their armaments. Aidan, go on.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, but there was pressure in the beginning to force Turkey to give the PKK passage through into northern Syria so they could attack ISIL. And Turkey wouldn't, they just wouldn't allow it. It's like the PKK does not represent the 20 million Kurds living in Turkey. The ruling AK party does, George. I know you don't
like the ruling AK party doesn't represent any Kurdish people in Turkey. That's completely wrong.
George, more Kurds vote for Recep Tayyip Erdogan to become president than they did for the Kurdish candidate. There are 20 million Kurds.
It's nonsense. The PKK is by far and away the leading force amongst the Kurdish people in Turkey. Everybody knows that. Why would you deny that?
I'm not. It's a leading force. There are 20 million Kurds in Turkey, and there must be at least half of them live in the cities in the west, George. It's not. They're not all these PKK Marxist terrorists like it's made out to be. It's a Zionist trap to return the 30-year war, the $300 billion war, the 30,000 death toll civil war back into Turkish borders. Turks aren't going to fall for this trap, George. Hey, you know, as for the West, if they're not happy about Turkish commitment to NATO, they can always tell them that they're just not European enough to be a member, just like they do when it comes to them dealing with their EU application. I mean, you know, the Turks are getting a hard time, but don't forget they've taken on 1.5 million Syrian refugees and 250,000...
But there's only 1.5 million refugees in Turkey because Turkey has gone to war against its neighbour, has opened its borders for every Primark checkout guy or waiter in a Portsmouth Bangladeshi restaurant who wants to go and kill people in Syria. They've opened their borders for every Chechen, every Libyan, every Tunisian, anybody who will go and kill people in Syria. Turkey has opened the door for them, facilitated their entire operation. So you want me to be giving credit to Erdogan because he's looking after 1.5 million refugees? There wouldn't be any refugees if it wasn't for Erdogan.
All right, George. Well, what about the 250,000 Kurds from Kobani that just crossed over as ISIL were approaching them? I mean, if they were that bad, they wouldn't have let them in, would they? They would just let ISIL slaughter them.
Well, they could hardly in front of... They're a NATO member, for God's sake. They could hardly allow, in front of the world, in front of the United States, which has declared war against ISIL, they could hardly lock their door and leave 150,000 people to be beheaded by ISIL, but they didn't allow a single fighter to cross the border to defend Kobani against ISIL. And how could they? Because they are a part of the creation of ISIL in the first place. I don't know why you feel the need to defend Erdogan's policy in this way, Aidan.
I'm not, George. I'm not, George. I agree with you what you said. This is a creation of Turkey. It's a creation of Israel. It's a creation of, you know, of the Sykes-Picot redrawing of the area. I'm not in any point denying it. And I'm not saying that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is an angel at any point in this. What I'm saying is that it's been too much focus on the Turkish side of things as opposed to what's going on in the rest of Syria. Do you know what I mean? It's like everything's going on in Kobani. Well, what about what's going on in Aleppo at the moment? Assad's bombing the hell out of the people. There's more people dying in Aleppo than there are in Kobani.
Well, look, Aidan, you and I know each other well now, at least over the airwaves. Let's go back to the first principles. The Syrian regime is at war with a plethora of fanatic Takfiri organizations who are determined to destroy the country and have destroyed much of the country, who are determined to rip the social, religious, cultural, ethnic tapestry that Syria represents. It's not the state of Syria's fault that it has a government which could do far more to reach a political settlement with its opposition. It's not ancient Syria's fault that it has this government or that government. Syria itself is being destroyed, consumed by these people. So if there's fighting and killing going on in Aleppo and in other parts of the country, that's because Syria has been invaded by 100,000 foreigners from everywhere, from Portsmouth, from East London, from West London, from Chechnya, Libya, Tunisia, all over the world. They have to go. And if they don't go, then the Syrian government is certainly going to fight them. God willing, I'll be back in just 3 minutes after a short news bulletin. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. We're talking about the Israeli closure of the al-Aqsa Mosque, and we're talking, as we must, over and over, about the murder and mayhem in Syria, the Kurds, ISIL, the FSA, Turkey. What do each of those want from the fight? And what possessed the Zionist state to take such an inflammatory, incendiary step as the closure of one of the very holiest places in Islam? Julian's on the line in the UK on that very subject. Julian, welcome to the show.
Let me tell you something, George. It's great to speak to you again.
Thank you.
On the Al-Aqsa, it reminds me of when Ariel Sharon set foot inside the Al-Aqsa compound.
He did, and created the first intifada.
That's right, and we know what happened then, but back then there was a Yasser Arafat, and there isn't now, and I think this is Israel flexing their muscles in the absence of someone like that. And any would-be Yasser Arafats are in the Israeli dungeons, Marwan Barghouti, for example. So I think it's just, if an intifada happened because Ariel Sharon set foot in the mosque, what should happen if they lock it completely? But
yeah, no, it's a very good point. Although the president Mahmud Abbas, as you'll see here on the screen, has described the Israeli action today as a declaration of war. That's quite a strong statement coming from him, Julian.
Well, it's a strong statement coming out of his mouth, but you know, words and deeds are a different thing.
Hamas have called on the Palestinian people to rise up and go to the mosque now and defend it. It's under siege. It is being closed, partially opened. People are restricted. Only those over 50 are allowed to go there. And even now, after this step taken by Israel, only go to certain parts of the mosque. This is simply intolerable. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is illegally occupied territory. International law does not recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And there are 2 billion Muslims in the world who regard it as absolutely sacred. So the question is, Julian, what are the Muslims in particular going to do about it? Tomorrow is the Jummah. Is the Muslim Ummah going to be silent tomorrow whilst this is happening in Al-Aqsa? What is the international community going to do about it? It is illegally occupied territory. And it's bad enough constantly announcing new illegal settlements to be built. But when they actually put their hands on Al-Aqsa itself, how can the Western governments do nothing about such a thing? I myself tabled today in Parliament a raft of questions and a motion condemning this action, demanding to know what the British government are going to do about it. Julian, the question though is, why has Israel done this? Is it just a flexing of muscles?
I can't work out. Maybe it's an insane death wish. But you mentioned the intention of destroying Al-Aqsa. I mean, destroying Muslim holy sites is something that they've learned from the Takfiri fanatics. They've been destroying Islamic holy sites for years. So
Good
yet
point.
again, it's the same goal, whether it's for different purpose. They are useful idiots to each other. The
Good point,
taxpayers-
Julian. Good point. Well brought out as normal. That was Julian in the UK on why Israel has taken this step in relation to al-Aqsa. On the same subject, Jay in the UK wants to have a word. Go ahead, Jay.
Hi, George. Thank you very much. I just want to say about the mosque closure, it's a blatant provocation to create a reason, in my opinion, for a planned action in the name of Palestinians or Palestinian sympathizers. If we see another disastrous bombing or another horrible act committed in Europe or in the West, immediately the media could say, well, Abbas did declare a war, act of war, by closure of this mosque, but why we have to pay for it? So this could be a reason for the closure, not an insane act, not just an act because they are just being wanting to be horrible, but a well-planned action in order to create a situation in the name of Palestinians or Palestinian sympathizers. I mean, that is one of the things.
Well, I think that's a very shrewd point, Jay. I just make this point in reply. It is perfectly possible that just like Sharon's rampage across the Haram al-Sharif was a deliberate provocation, so might this be. The question, though, is, as you're in the UK, as I am, why would Western countries want to go on paying and arming and supporting a state so reckless that it is prepared to risk a conflagration throughout the entire world with 2 billion Muslims in it over the desecration of one of their very holiest places? We can understand, given who runs Israel, why they might do that. But the bigger question is, why would Western countries go on supporting them now that they have?
You know very well, George, that in the past few decades, at least 100 years, the hegemony of the Western world against the world, I mean, before China wasn't as powerful as it is today, Russia 20 years ago was nothing. I mean, now Russia is a very powerful country. Iran was nothing 20, 30 years ago. It was just a dictatorship. Now it's an independent, fantastic, brilliant, powerful country. So these countries are actually a threat to the Western hegemony and the Western position in the world, and the West doesn't like it. The West and Europe doesn't like to see its position being kind of stepped over. So they want to make sure that Iran is just being pushed out the way, and then after Iran they want to get rid of Russia, and then after Russia get rid of China. These are the three countries that are actually standing against the Western powers, and to me it's pretty obvious. It's just a battle for who's going to be the next domineering factor in this world. So they want to change the borders. The ISIS is not an imaginary or fictitious or unprofessional group of people. They're professional people who have been trained for quite a long time. They've got exactly the same ideas as the people Mujahideen of Iran. They work with Israel and they kill Muslims and anybody who is against a state of Israel. So whether you're Christian, whether you're Sunni, Shiite, even if you're Jew, they will kill anybody who is there against Israel. So that is the reason I believe the Western government, European government, they don't want to see the position being eroded. So they want to create as much trouble as possible in the Middle East, to change the borders and to change the players in the chess that is definitely going to be in favor of Iran, China, and Russia in the future. That's my opinion.
Well, it's a very studied opinion and very well and eloquently expressed. Thanks for that, Jay. Don't be a stranger. Call the show anytime. That was Jay in the UK arguing that this is not actually an insane act. It's a criminal act, but not an insane one. And that it may very well be that it's a deliberate provocation to bring forth exactly the kind of response that I am thinking might very well occur. Let's hear from Barry in Norway on the Syrian situation. Barry, welcome.
Good evening, Honorable.
Good evening, sir. Go ahead.
Honorable, I don't know where to start, but in fact, I want to give a comment both for that, how to call it, Palestine and also Syria. But my point here is, which the whole world is aware of, if we could just take our minds back during the Second World War, the brutality Hitler did with the Nazis and towards the Jews. And back again, or after all what they did to the Jews, that brutality, the whole world cried for the Jews. And the same Jews, and of course with a mix of bandits, who fled from Europe, to Israel, with the help of the British and the Americans, doing the same thing what Hitler did to the Jews. They are repeating the same thing to the Palestinians. Now, my point is, for years, Palestinians are suffering just like in South Africa during the apartheid. And the same regimes and the bandits who were supporting the apartheid are the same people who are supporting this brutality that is happening in Palestine and in Syria. United Nations is watching, doing nothing. And I think, in fact, the word UN, I don't believe in this UN thing. There is nothing like UN. It is you Western, you American, you British, you European.
Well, that's a very powerful call, Barry. It's not that Israel is doing the same things as Hitler. Hitler killed maybe 10 million people in the Holocaust. 6 million of them were Jews. Millions of others were also murdered by Hitler, industrially, systematically, in a genocidal near decade. And Israel's not doing that. But the conduct of the so-called Israel Defense Force against Gaza, for example, is absolutely comparable to the conduct of the Nazis when they ethnically cleansed the ghetto in Warsaw. The collective punishment of people. I just heard in the show before this, a Zionist in the United States in San Francisco say that there were 2,000 people killed in Gaza over the summer, but half of them, he said, were armed terrorists. Well, that's of course absurd. But even if it was true, that means half of them were not armed terrorists. But they were murdered, massacred too. For him, this is a collective punishment. Collective punishment is illegal in international law, but it was absolutely the policy of the Nazi occupiers of Europe. Whenever a resistance operation was mounted in Nazi-occupied Europe, the Nazis lined up entirely unconnected people and cold-bloodedly murdered them as a discouragement to the others. And Israel is doing exactly the same thing. So there's not a Holocaust in Palestine, and we shouldn't make such comparisons. They are not Nazis, but their actions would shame the Nazis in Gaza and elsewhere. Andreas is in Cyprus. Let's hear from him. He's always worth hearing from. Why has Israel closed the al-Aqsa Mosque, Andreas?
Good evening, George.
Good evening to you, sir.
We have to remember, we're dealing with a man who had a war with the Palestinians, 2,100 dead, 600 were children.
Yeah.
We're dealing with Netanyahu, who a few months ago he was holding a poster of a bomb which Iran are supposedly making.
Yes.
Which was something like a drawing from a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say, you cannot reason with this man. This man is absolutely, he's a lunatic.
Mm.
He is a lunatic. As soon as he's gone, I think maybe then may see some peace. Maybe.
I really don't think so, Andreas. I agree with you that he's a lunatic, but we've had lunatics before, and sadly, we'll have lunatics after him. Every time there's an election in what they call Israel, an even more right-wing, crazed, lunatic government is elected in the stead of the one that was there before. Ever since the 1960s, the centrist, laborist parties have been becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and the most extreme, bloodthirsty Zionist parties, even when they break up and split, get stronger and stronger. And after Netanyahu, I tell you, I'm sorry to say, comes worse than Netanyahu. During the massacre you just described eloquently, over the summer in Gaza, 96% of the Israeli public supported Netanyahu's attack on Gaza. So that 96% is not going to suddenly become different just because Netanyahu goes. Israel will have to be operated on by its friends outside. A surgeon cannot operate on his own foot, and Israel is not going to operate on its own crimes. The big question, as I've been saying all night, is not why Israel does what it does, but why other countries like yours and mine allow them to do so, support them in doing so, pay for them to do so, arm them to do so. That's the big question. Let's go to Finland. I don't get there often. Ruzi is in Finland on the Syrian question. Ruzi, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. George.
Good evening to you, sir.
First of all, I would like to say that we appreciate your struggle.
Thank you.
Against injustice and oppression.
Thank you.
May the God give you strength and power on your struggle.
Thank you.
And secondly, I would like to mention the fight of ISL in Syria and Iraq. In my view, ISL, it was created by certain satanic powers for certain reasons. The first reason is to blacken Islam, to blacken name of Islam. And the second, to eliminate power of Iran, to weaken Iran and Iran's friends. Because for certain countries, if Iran more powerful, they afraid of more, and as well as Iran's friends. And those ISL people who cut the Muslims' head, they are, I cannot tell them human, because human cannot do the same thing even to kitchens. How they read Quran, I don't understand, because Quran says if you kill, in the Ma'idah chapter, Allah says if you kill one innocent person, you kill all humanity. And if you save one, you save all humanity. What they read, how they act, it is very, very strange to me and to many people. They blacken name of Islam, they blacken of Muslims, they blacken even name of humanity, humans.
Rosie, that's a very powerful call. And of course you're correct. The besmirching, I don't say blacken, because black is a great color. The besmirching of the name of Islam carried out by these people has to be seen, touched, heard, to be believed. You see, you and I are people on roughly the same wavelength. So are most of the people watching this program, watching Press TV. But if you go, as I do and must, amongst the mass of the people in this country, you have no idea the damage that is done to Islam by these head-chopping, throat-cutting, raping, women buying and selling, murderous thieves. The damage is almost incalculable. I hear people talking about them as if they were Islam, as if they were the Muslims. It is incalculable, the damage. Rosie, thanks for the call. Milad is in Thailand. I don't often get there. Milad, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. If you give me a time, I want to talk about in both issues.
You'll have to be quick.
So, okay, I will do quick. First of all, I want to say that you asked a question that why international community is not saying anything regarding that. As we all know, not because we are Muslim, all the world know that the UN is the founder of Israel. Britain acted as a midwife while he created the Israel, so-called Israel. Okay, and now what I believe, in both occasions, Israel is okay. Today he has done that. He said, okay, no one is entering into the al-Aqsa. I do believe sincerely, if I'm not wrong, they precisely they want to test, whether England has a nuclear power or not. If you look at the, ISIL or ISIS, and now they are doing in Gaza, they just want to provoke Iran, okay? Who created the ISIS and ISIL? I do believe that, the British, American, and French governments in particular, aided and abetted by the Saudi and Turkish, and there are, many other clients in Qatar, Jordan, Pakistan, etc.
Okay, look, Milad, we're running out of time. You made a good point. Come back next week, and we'll talk again. I've got Jesus on the line. Isa, he's in the UK, must have the final word. Isa, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Nice talking to you. I come for the first time on Press TV. I just have my view on the war on Syria and also on al-Aqsa Mosque. For the people who are, as you mentioned, like ISIS or others, Turkey, I believe there's a bigger agenda of Americans to redraw the map in this area, and the PKK is those, especially the Kurdish soldiers, are the disposable soldiers, so they will fight. So there is now control is very easily to control those places being remote as well, being even in America. And for Turkey is getting bigger, and Erdogan is also trying to have his own agenda. So the West thinking to have a control on him. So they put all the refugees in Turkey. So they are under a lot of problems in Turkey as well. So these refugees. So for them it's a big issue now.
Well,
and
look,
for the al-Aqsa Mosque,
Isa, most of the refugees are not in Turkey. Most of the refugees are in Lebanon and Jordan. There are many refugees in Turkey. Turkey and Jordan are both contributors to the disaster that Syria is now in. So they can hardly complain that they've got refugees. This existential struggle, attack against Syria will have to be repelled. It is being repelled. And I'll talk about it, no doubt, next week.
Just make sure about your television volume set up to 0. 0, 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me, put through the phone number, and then we'll call you back. Can I have your telephone number? Okay, so I'll send you a comment to us. If you call me back, can you make sure your television volume is set down to 0?